1 year and a few days in office, constant elections and re-election of local council administrators, we can now say that Rivers State Governor Simeon Fubara has been on his toes in a bid to rebuild the Niger Delta region in southern Nigeria. This time, the current unrest in the Rivers State is as a result of Governor Fubara's clash with his predecessor's loyalists. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, Blessings Musugu, and guess who I have with me?
Of course, it's me, Bernard Akede. And I think I'm tired of, saying, oh, I'm here this week, I'm not here next week.
I know.
Well,
Let's just accept that I'm the only constant person on the show, and then you're fluctuating as well as the others, and then we move on.
But coincidentally, the only constant thing in life is what?
Change.
And so who's changing?
Ironically true.
Well, I'm still a part of the show, and well, my presence, or my steez, as they say these days, as people would like to call it, is, well, these days is still very, very much intact, just so that Blessings knows. Now, speaking of steez, the Ojude Oba Festival sparked controversial, I beg your pardon, sparked plenty conversations online again, just as it did that last year, where we got memories from the festival. There are some underlying economic issues that we might be missing. Now, Bernard Akede, I covered the Ojude Festival this year for News Central, and it's a pleasure for me to be here again. And we're going to dig our fingers into the Ojude Festival, just as some people dug their fingers into the food that they ate on that day. But of course, before we go on, we will quickly bring you up to speed to some of the things that we were looking at from last week and we're following up this week. Now, the leaders of South Africa's Inkatha Freedom has proposed government of national unity with African National Congress, that's the ANC. Also, investigations are still underway to know the cause of a ghastly boat accident that claimed the lives of at least 80 people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And
finally, the Nigeria Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the NCDC, continues to raise alarm on the increasing cholera cases nationwide, which is very, very scary. Anyway, have a seat. We'll be right back. It's Report Desk Africa.
Thank you for staying with us. My name again is Bernard Akede, and this is Report Desk Africa. Now, tensions in Rivers State have escalated dramatically in recent days, culminating in violent clashes between political factions and security forces. Now, the crisis, which has gripped the state's capital, Port Harcourt, and the surrounding areas, stems from the disputed gubernatorial elections held earlier this year. Now, Austin Azu, News Central correspondent, is currently in Port Harcourt capital, Rivers State, in Rivers State capital, beg your pardon, Port Harcourt, and he's brought back this report while he's been closely following the story.
State Government House, where the swearing in of the 23 local government chairmen and their vice is currently holding inside the ESCO chambers. There are heavy presence of security personnel on the ground. Meanwhile, these supporters couldn't gain access into the inner chambers to witness the events. It's expected that at the end of the swearing-in, these council chairmen and their vice will return to their various local government areas to assume duties.
The development adds another twist to the political crisis of the state, months after the Rivers Assembly passed the Local Government Amendment Bill into law. The Rivers State Assembly has been vetted by lawmakers, allowing it to extend the tenure of council chairpersons, their vice, and councillors. However, a court nullified the amended law, prompting an appeal. But on Tuesday, some suspected youths loyal to both Governor Fubara and his predecessor had a clash over tenure allegation based on court order.
If your tenure has expired, doesn't mean I should say because I want to please you, I will allow you. No, it doesn't happen anywhere. People must take over, manage the affair, and elections be conducted.
Some of the newly sworn-in caretaker committee chairman is here to address his people on the vision and mandate assigned him.
My vision is simple. When you trickle it down from what the governor is saying in the state, he says Rivers first. Where we are today is Faga first. The interest of Faga people first. The interest of everybody you've seen here first. We will not subvert the resources that is meant to advance and better the lives of the people you are seeing here for our selfish interests.
Meanwhile, these legal practitioners provide answers to the legality of the appointment of the caretaker committees by the governor.
What he had done is clearly an aberration, clearly unconstitutional. I think he's fanning the embers of illegality. Section 7 of the 1999 Constitution is very clear. Bearing in mind that there is a pending suit at the Supreme Court against this caretaker, and Rivers State government is a party to it.
Now, mark you, if you look at Section 176, subsection 2, it says that the governor of the state is the chief executive officer of the state. So how can you imagine you're the CEO of a state that you want people to come outside and give you directions? The summary is that as we speak right now, there is no legal impediment stopping the governor of Rivers State from putting in place caretaker committees to run the state.
One thing residents of the state desire now is for the politicians and supporters to ensure violence, maintain the peace, and be guided by the Constitution to promote unity, inclusive administration, and achieve progress at the grassroots.
In Port Harcourt, for News Central, Austin Azu.
All right, that was a report put together by Austin Azu from Port Harcourt. Now, from what you see there, the youths are agitated at the planned elongation of the tenure, especially for the chairmanship. And of course, Fubara, on the other hand, has said that he will not stand for anyone who comes for his supporters. And so we're having a bit of tussle right there in River State currently. But Bernard, what do you make of the whole, chairmanship, tenure elongation? I was having a conversation and someone said that if only positions in power were made to be, voluntary, like what's the word now? You're not paid for it, right? You just volunteer to do it. We would have less of these kind of tussles.
Of course, I totally agree with you. Maybe positions in government in Nigeria should just be like positions in churches, where you come and volunteer. It's volunteer work. Or if it doesn't even necessarily need to be volunteer work, right? Possibly, maybe if the remuneration for these positions was not as bulky as much as what we get in Nigeria here, maybe people would think more of the service than what they stand to gain. Yeah. I think sadly that what's going on now is actually tearing the state further apart than what it was before. I remember I was in Port Harcourt some time ago. Nee was also in Port Harcourt some time ago. I'm still on these issues, on several issues that have been pending, and it all boils down to the rift between the current governor, Fubara, Similai Fubara, and the former governor, Nyesom Wike, who is currently the FCT minister.
Yeah. Anyways, that said, we're now joined by News Central's correspondent, whose report you just saw there, and who is currently in River State, Austin Azu. Thank you so much, Austin, for joining us. All right, Austin, if you can hear us, I would like to find out what would you say are the primary causes or the primary triggers of the current crisis in River State? We know that River State has, had these kind of pockets of crisis and violence ever since the governor Fubara assumed office. Stemming from his, misunderstanding now with his predecessor, and then those Nyesom Wike supporters as well who refused to accept him basically as the new governor. And then a lot of people would say that the major issues began when he discovered that he's actually governor, because if you look at the trajectory of things, initially it was as though he was playing to the tune of the predecessor, but eventually he stepped up and started taking decisions. But at the end of the day, what would we say is the cause of this recent tussle in River State, especially the one that involves the youths this time around?
Well, first and foremost, we should look at the issues before us, the issue of leadership. Leadership is not, it's not given, it's taken. So since October last year, precisely October 10th, that the soured relationship between the immediate past governor, now the FCT minister, and the current governor. Since then, the state seems not to have political rest because of the power that has been taken by the current governor. Going further, you will probably discover that you need to assert yourself into the position of the governor to further begin your manifesto, and so that people will really know that yes, you are really in charge of your government. Before now, he was never the governor, so probably during the electionary campaign or probably immediately after the elections, he has to, still play the card. He still need to play the role of being a governor-elect. So immediately after he was sworn in, he needs to assert himself into the responsibility of his leadership and take charge of his government. So, sincerely speaking, that should be most of the things that I've heard so far, that as a governor, he needs to assert himself into the leadership role and carry out his own political manifesto instead of working on the directive from the former governor.
All right, now, Austin, we've seen several cases. Of course, this is not the first time we're seeing some kind of disturbance in Rivers State, particularly in the capital, Port Harcourt. And in most of those times, we see issues where security forces come in. Sometimes they have issues or they have clashes with the citizens or with the protesters, as the case may be. But in this case, we want to ask, I would like to ask you clearly and directly, what role so far are the security forces playing in managing and resolving the crisis that we're seeing, on social media and on TV?
Well, I think this question ought to have gone to the police populations to tell us what they have done so far. But what we have seen currently on ground here, the police and the relevant security agencies have taken over the secretariat. So it means they are enforcing the directive of the IGP that they should seal up the secretariat to prevent, arson and to further prevent breakdown of law and order in the state or across the 23 local government areas here in Rivers State. So the police, to some extent, they seems to be protecting the property of the state. Then secondly, it seems to be preventing any hoodlums, suspected hoodlums who are likely to take advantage of such, unrest in the state to unleash mayhem. Don't forget that some casualties were recorded. If the police did not arrive the same on time, who knows what would have happened? And don't forget that some other persons under the guise of the protest or under the guise of the demonstration are likely to take advantage of these issues raised. So it's very imperative and very sacrosanct that the police remain steadfast in ensuring they are able to protect lives and property and to ensure that they are able to calm the situation down. Don't forget that unlike about 3 days ago, the political atmosphere in Rivers State was tensed up, but gradually it seems to be reducing because of the interference of the security agencies. Of course, it's a teamwork. The police are there, the NSADC are there, and other agencies, the Nigerian Army, they are there. So they, to a large extent, have been able to down the tension in terms of providing security for government property, for innocent citizens who might have been attacked by the protesters.
All right, Austin, I'm glad you talked about the security and the police as well. Now, talking about the police, we know that this issue in Rivers State has become quite fatal because recently a police officer lost his life. Now, how is this crisis impacting the daily lives of residents and their concerns as well about human rights or the violation of it or humanitarian issues arising from the crisis, especially now that it involves life and death, basically?
Yes, earlier on we met some persons, particularly petty traders who get their daily livings from what they do from the secretariat complex. Some of them happen to be buying and selling precisely those food vendors at the Port Harcourt City Council. So because of the situation at hand, they have to relocate from the secretariat. They move to another location. Definitely, you don't expect high patronage because one, the people whom are your primary target of business are no longer there. And secondly, the other people whom are likely to be patronizing you might not be the ones whom you have known for a period of time. So it's really affecting particularly the petty traders. From what we are told that what they on a daily basis, plus and minus, according to her, she makes about 10,000 naira outside her expenditure. But for the first few days, that she can hardly go home with 2.5, considering the high cost of living we have at the moment. Then, on the other hand, you discover that most of these taxi drivers who take these civil servants to their offices, because of what has happened in recent times, most of the civil servants who are supposed to be at their duty post could no longer go to their offices. We are just coming from the Salah, where you had a long period of break, about 4 days thereabout. So a civil servant who has been at home, and the man or the woman who is selling food have been at home, you can imagine the economic challenges that this current political crisis has created, because most of them who are doing these small businesses can no longer have access to funds, no customers. So it's really telling hard on them, according to what we are told by the food sellers.
All right, thank you so much, Justin. Just before we let you go, I know earlier you've talked about security operatives trying to restore normalcy to the states and to the capital and everywhere else in the states. But what can you tell us now that is happening on the ground while you're in Port Harcourt? How peaceful is it? What activities are ongoing? Is there a curfew? Whether official or unofficial? What exactly is on the ground now that you can tell us?
Yes, as at the moment, the newly appointed caretaker committee chairman, were unable to access their offices. So we gathered that a directive was given to them for them to operate outside the secretariat. So vis-a-vis ditto the fact that governance has started already. So based on what they really want to achieve, why they are waiting for the directive of the IGP, pending when the security agencies will vacate the secretariat complexes for them to return to their duty post. But however, we were at Obiakpo local government area where we met some youths, and they were addressed by the immediate past chairman. And of course, they were hanging their hope on the appeal court, knowing fully well that the matter is still before the appeal court. So pending when the appeal court will give their verdict. So hopefully, maybe they will have their smile again. But however, they are still hanging around the secretariat complex. I can't find, we're unable to find out why they were still there. But the security agencies, heavily armed security agencies, the police, the army, the NSADC, very armed, they are at the various local government area with their armored car, and to ensure that they are able to forestall any breakdown of law and order within the secretariat complex. But the aim of this whole exercise on Tuesday was to ensure that they are able to gain access into the protesters were able to gain access into the secretariat complex and prevent the other party not to gain access into the secretariat complex, which snowball into exchange of gunfire, and even lives were lost. So the security agencies, for what they are doing right now, is to ensure that nobody goes beyond the boundary and nobody delve into the secretariat complex that has been mandated by them to barricade, that nobody should gain entrance into it. Even the appointed caretaker committee cannot access it, and not allow the other faction who their tenure just expired cannot access it.
All right, Austin Azu, thank you so much for giving us the update live from Port Harcourt, Rivers State. And of course, we're going to be updating the viewers as the issue unfolds as well. Thank you once again.
You're most welcome.